What is up, guys? Thank you for joining me for this video. Today we are talking to our lovely 4 people, and we are talking about the high side, the low side of type 4, and the paths of integration, what 4s look like when they're under stress, what they look like when they're doing well, when things are going well in their life, and when their relationships are intact and they feel emotionally healthy, and kind of that path of integration, or you might say disintegration, that the 4 takes. All right, so that's the subject that we're talking about today. I want to begin by just kind of summarizing real quick. A 4 is one of the worth types with 2 and 3, and what that means is 2s, 3s, and 4s, in my opinion, are basically asking the question, where does my worth and value come from? What makes me valuable? What makes me important? It's kind of like those 3, it's not enough just to be human. It's not enough just to be born. They question, whether, and they may not do it consciously, but they question their worth and value. Like, what am I bringing to the table? It's like they've got to prove their value and their worth. Just being alive, just being created in the image of God isn't enough. It's like they've got to help you understand that they have value and worth. And 2s do this by becoming helpful to you and by becoming pleasing to you. And so when they shine the spotlight on you, you feel good and you want them around you, and they find their worth in being helpful and being loved. And 3s find their worth and value in kind of, you might say, the most simplistic way is just adding value to themselves by attaining and by achieving and becoming admired. And so, you might say, look at this beautiful body, look at all I've accomplished, and they shine the spotlight on themselves and draw you to them. And so they feel valuable because of their position, because of what they've attained. 4s, I think, are a little more complex in that, they kind of look at the world as if everybody is, just like factory workers. They're all just factory workers, all wearing factory uniforms, and they're easily replaced. Everybody could be easily replaced. I don't want to be like that. 4 kind of looks at it and says, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be just a cog in the machine. So I've got to separate myself from that and stand out in some way, in some unique way, in some different way. And so 4s, are looking for what makes them different, what makes them unique, what makes them special. And they're going to probably find some kind of niche, or niche. I'm not sure exactly the right way to say that, but they're looking for some kind of niche that makes them outstanding in some way, something that they can focus on their creativity, and in that way they differentiate themselves from others, and then feel like their worth and value comes from their unique contribution or their unique personality or their unique identity. In a sense, I think all 3, are saying the same thing. I'm not like everybody else. All 3 types, 2s, 3s, and 4s, are all saying, I'm not like everybody else. The 2s are saying, look, people are mean, people are cold, people are unloving, but I'm not like that. I'm loving. I care about what you have to say. I'm supportive of what you have to say. I'm pleasing. I'm helpful. I'm a giver. And I take care of people, and so I'm not like everybody else. And 3s, you could say it like this. 3s would say, people just want to show up and do halfway work, and they're not willing to lay it all out on the field and come early and stay late and work hard, and so 3s would maybe look at themselves like, we're leaders, or we have the leadership potential or the leadership drive. Everybody else are followers. Everybody else is followers, and everybody else is just showing up to work to do their job. But we're going to stay harder, work harder, stay longer, work harder, and our determination and our drive is what sets us apart. We're hungry and everybody else is satisfied. We're hungry and we're going to overcome and we're going to accomplish and we're going to do great things. And so we're not like everybody else. And fours, I think that is the, kind of the basis of their personality is everybody is so mundane. Everybody just is so willing to just blend in and merge and become a part of the collective pot. And I'm not willing to do that. I have to be authentic to myself, and I have to be authentic to my inner voice and my inner guidance system. And I've got to be real. And they'll say it in those ways, but I think what they're really saying is I'm not like everybody else. So I think 2s, 3s, and 4s all have that in common. Is that their personalities are built on that. I guess, in a sense, like every type, is not like everybody else, but I don't think that it drives the personality like it does with the Worth group. And realize this, that 2s, 3s, and 4s, they're all moving towards something. All right, 2s are moving toward you to take care of you. 3s are moving toward their goals and objectives, and 4s are moving toward what they feel is authentic and real to themselves. They're, but we're not just moving towards something, we're moving away from something. We're moving away, in the case of 2s, 3s, and 4s, they're moving away from shame. And the shame is that sense of worthlessness, that if I don't set myself apart, then who am I for the 4? If I don't overcome and accomplish, who am I as a 3? If I'm not number 1, then who am I? In a 2, if I'm not loved and at the center of the web, and tied in with all these relationships, then who am I? So, all right, that gives you a little bit of my mental framework for how I think about this. You can agree or disagree, it's fine, but that's how I sort of think about the 2, 3s, and 4s in that Worth group. Now, further delineate, you're watching this video because you want to know more about the 4 specifically. So, the path of integration is 4s move to 2 in unhealth, and they move to 8 or to 1 in health. Okay, so they're very much over on one side of the Enneagram, aren't they? They move to 2 in unhealth. Let's talk about unhealth. Well, let's go back to our cabin in the woods analogy, and I'm using this analogy in all this series. The high and low side of each type. For the cabin in the wood analogy is that 4s, your cabin in the woods is the 4 cabin. Okay, so you live there. That's your home. That's where you belong. That's who you are. That's your identity, and that's where you're most comfortable in your circle of 4ness. And if you want to know what that is, go watch my videos on the 4, or do your research, and I'm sure you have already. That's where you belong. Now you have 2 neighbors on either side down the path. One is farther away than the other, but you have 2 neighbors that you can borrow from. One of your neighbors is the 3 neighbor. And the 3, of course, we've already talked about. The 3, is built to achieve and built to overcome and set goals and all that. So you can borrow from that energy. When you get into stressful situations, or, you're in a challenging spot, you may lean over there and knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, I need some of that courage. I need some of that boldness. I need some of that assertiveness. I need some of that. Sense of accomplishment and some of that power that you have. And they'll lean on that 3 energy, or that 3 neighbor at times, to be assertive, to set goals, to be admirable to people, because 4s, left to themselves, they might alienate themselves so far away from the group that they start to look odd to people. And we could talk about examples, but when they lean on that 3 energy, 3s are all concerned about looking great. That's what 3s are concerned about looking great. And so when 4s go down and knock on that door a little bit, they can borrow some of that. What do I have to do to rise to the top and to be admired? Okay, now down at the other end of the woods is your 5 neighbor. Okay, And fives, move out of the feeling group or move out of the worth group into the thinking group. And fives are called the investigator. And fives are very concerned with cerebral things. They're very concerned with cognitive process. They're very concerned with observing the world as it is, facts, information, details. They're not interested in what people feel. They're not interested in emotions. Fives are not interested in all that. They disconnect from all that stuff. They're not interested in social norms. And I think fours, that lean heavy on that five wing or that go down and visit the five neighbor can be a little less likely to care about social norms and about looking good. They want to be true to themselves and they want to think great thoughts. They want to have deep, important, weighty thoughts. And so the four wing five, or the four that goes to the five neighbor a lot, is going to be more cerebral, less flashy, less demonstrative, less showy than the 4-3. The four that leans on the five, is going to be more like searching for meaning. And sort of like the idea is like everybody is so comfortable in their thoughtless lives, in their simplistic lives, and that four that leans there on the five is going to want to dig at the real meaning and purpose of things, and they're going to be much more thoughtful. Okay, so the four is a feeling type. They feel things first, and then look, they're closest to the thinking type. They're far away from the action type, all right, the action group. So they're right next to the five. So the four is going to feel something first. They're going to feel things. Things are going to come up to the surface. They're going to feel it, and then they're going to overthink what their feelings mean. They're going to sit and think about their feelings and analyze their feelings and try to understand their feelings. And that can be helpful at times, but sometimes feelings are just feelings, and they may give you some information, but they may not give you the best information all the time. And so some feelings and some thoughts maybe are like leaves in a river. You need to just let them pass and not give them too much thought, not overanalyze them. Sometimes you just need to let some thoughts go and just realize, these thoughts are going to weigh me down, and these feelings are not always the best source of truth for me. And so I need to just maybe let some of these things go and not overanalyze them and get back to action, because that action is what fours may sometimes withdraw from, is action. They could get trapped in their deep feelings and their deep thoughts about those feelings, that it becomes romanticized, in that these things that you're thinking and feeling may never actually become real in your life. And so there's that longing in the four for these deep emotional experiences and these deep thinking experiences. But what can be missing in the four's life is concrete action. And so when the four is healthy, they move to one, where it's all about getting stuff done, being productive, and getting your list of practical things done. So when fours are unhealthy, they move to two. Excuse me. I got to beat on my chest like Tarzan. Okay. All right. So fours move to two in unhealth. Let's talk about what that means, and let's talk about what could happen in a four when they're unhealthy, what rises to the surface. And I think I would begin this by saying that fours in their unhealth are kind of a mixed bag. I don't know that you may see two fours responding in different ways under stress. Some can get more vocal and more more demonstrative in their frustration, where others might get more withdrawn and more silent and more and so both of them are under stress, but the way they respond might be unique to them. A big surprise that it's going to be unique to them. All right. So, let's say fours, could be moody. They can already be kind of moody and temperamental. Well, when they're under stress, you might expect to see that increase and see them become more moody and more temperamental and have a tendency to make everything about them. like to get to trip over themselves, like, get upset and frustrated, and then can end up kind of becoming their own worst enemy. What they're feeling and what they're thinking and what they're needing. And 4s can become self-punishing. But like I said, it's a mixed bag. Some of them can become self-punishing and self-loathing, and others can become other-punishing and other-loathing. And may turn the attention on who's to blame and start punishing other people. They may begin to complain more openly, and they've kind of been maybe bottled up a little bit. They've tempered themselves because they know that they might alienate people if they were just. So they have these authentic thoughts, these real thoughts, and they'd like to share them, but they sometimes will hold those back because they know that if they say that stuff out loud, they might alienate people further. When they get under stress, watch that lid come off, and maybe they'll just say what they've been thinking, but they have been tempering. When they aren't getting what they need, they could sulk. They could stop cooperating with people. And they may signal through all these things, that they need more attention and they need some care. That something is wrong and they need some attention, they need some care. They may act more withdrawn, more melancholy, more depressed, and even to the point of virtually shutting down. Others, though, like I said, mixed bag. Others may speed up the intensity and actually become more productive, sort of out of anger, but they can become more productive, and you'll see them, become more volatile and more move to action, as a way of responding, and work harder, but in sort of an anxious way, not in a relaxed, calm way, but in an anxious way. They may appear to become more reactive and to respond to things even more emotionally, and difficult time maybe in moderating, like they're trying to moderate those emotional responses. They may have a difficult time moderating those now that they're under stress, and be more expressive, more demonstrative, and in a sense more hurtful. Some may try to control themselves, knowing that they're going to alienate people, while others let it out, man. They just let it go. They'll let it rip, and let go of any concern about the impression that they're giving. They're just angry, and you're going to hear it. They're going to let that anger out. And again, those that try to moderate themselves when the stress level gets too high, like a volcano, they might explode, eventually, and let the anger out if they get hurt enough. In general, I think it's probably safe to say that you're going to see Eeyore, from Winnie the Pooh. You're going to see Eeyore, who is the proverbial kind of sad 4, melancholy, focused on what's missing, focused on what's not going right, focused on the negative, focused on what's not working, to the point that in their unhealth, they could become very pessimistic and even kind of obstructionistic, just putting up barriers and walls and just, being difficult. That's them in their unhealth. Now, why does it go to 2? What does it have to do with 2? Well, I think, when a 4 gets to that point in their unhealth, that they have sort of since lost it and have, let it out on people, and then they'll become aware that they have alienated themselves, maybe to the point, that they've damaged those relationships, that they have the potential, at least, that they might have damaged those relationships. And in other words, they've scratched, because remember, the animal for the 4 is the cat, right? And so cats get up on your lap and they purr and they're nice, and then for whatever reason, it doesn't make sense sometimes to us, the cat will just, turn on you and bite you and scratch you and then run away. Okay? And so when 4s are under stress, you'll see them like that cat, scratch and bite and attack, and it's sometimes over stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense. It's not objective. it may not be objective things that have happened that make sense to the rest of us. The rest of us kind of look at that and go, man, what's their problem? What's gotten into them? And it may just be that the 4 is so sensitive and picking up things or internal things that they're not communicating, that it's bothering them, and so they react, and then being true to themselves, they react on it, and then they leave and withdraw. And now when they get alone and can kind of relax a minute and get out from under the weight of all that hurt, pain, frustration, whatever's going on in their life, then you'll see them come back, or wait for you to come to them, or come back to you and then make up with you, try to re-establish that connection. And when you see a 4 trying to re-establish connection with you again after they've been, after there's been a disconnect, I think that is what it means to see a 4 go to 2, because 2s are all about connecting with you and, focusing the attention on you and being warm with you, right? That's not the nature of a 4 to be like that, right? The 4 is going to be true to themselves and look for what's different and all that, right? So when you see them connecting with you and focused on trying to re-establish connections that maybe have been broken, it's a sign, I think, that the 4 is under stress, that they're stressed that maybe these relationships are fractured. Okay, so what do 4s look like when they're on the high side? Well, they move to 1, right? And 1s, are the reformers, and 1s are all about what needs to be done, and let's get it done, and let's do it in an orderly way, and 1s are concrete, okay? They're not deep in their emotions unless it's anger. They're not deep in their emotional life and taking stock and all that stuff. They're just, give me my orders and I'll carry them out kind of people, okay? And 4s, when they're healthy, they can kind of let go of all of their emotional information for a moment. They can let go of their deep feelings to a degree and take all of their creative passion and move it towards something that's concrete and productive, rather than just pining away at what's missing or what's wrong or why things aren't the way they ought to be, like Eeyore. They become productive and passionate about some real, tangible, useful project. And they bring their creativity and their passion and their drive, into something that is useful and productive. They become more objective. We can say it that way. They become more objective and less subjective. When you're turning inward into yourself and your feelings and what those feelings mean and thinking about that, all of that is subjective. All of that is subjective. It's all, hidden within you. When 4s become more healthy, they let go of some of that subjective noise and they become more objective in what was said, what was meant by what was said, how am I going to respond, what needs to be done, how are we going to get it done, who's going to be on this project. And they just become more grounded in, we might say, the real world, although I think 4s might object as to what the real world is, but they become more productive and useful and less mental and emotional. I know this has got to be so painful to hear. It's painful for me to say it. I can't imagine as a 4, some of you might be just losing your minds right now. Maybe even angry, I don't know. But just be patient with me. I'm trying to understand. Okay, so at least give me that. All right, they focus outside themselves, because where is the focus go under stress? It's it's internal. It's what am I thinking, and why was that said, and what did they mean by that, and maybe I don't measure up, maybe I'm not enough, and why am I treated like this, and what, and so under stress they're going internal. In health, they're looking more external at the world around and just what needs to be done and what can I do, and how to be more productive. They become more practical, more grounded in the practical world, the objective world, more disciplined, not waiting for the inspiration to hit, but going after goals, whether I feel like it or not, and just doing what needs to be done. More structured, more wise, creative, compassionate, more supportive of others, and bring that creativity and that heart into supporting other people and allowing other people to be real with them, because 4s are not going to be afraid of people being real. They want people to be real. They want people to be genuine. Bringing people together, being sensitive with other people, communicating their feelings, communicating their desires with self-awareness, but then being able to let some of those feelings go and not give them too much attention, not overanalyze those things, let them go. Communicating more honestly, something 4s, are inclined to do, communicate honestly, but with a sense of compassion and support, and welcoming people's real selves, into the environment. Authentically supporting people, helping others thrive and enjoy what they're doing. So I think this is, a brief summary of the paths of integration, or the lines of integration and disintegration. Realize that if you're unhealthy, you're in the outhouse. You're down at the bottom of the hill. So your cabin, is right here in the middle, and you got the 3 neighbor and the 5 neighbor. When you're in your place of unhealth and you're angry, you're hurt, you feel isolated, you feel misunderstood, you feel taken for granted, you feel like everybody else, remember the sin of a 4 is envy, everybody's life is working for them and everybody seems to be, fitting in and has their sense of belonging and their place, and you are left behind and you've not been given a fair, deal at life. Just realize where you're at. You're in your outhouse. You're at the bottom of the hill in the outhouse. And, maybe this is where you go for relief. All right. You're there for a reason, and it's okay to be there. It's okay to be there. You find yourself there, and you're hurt, and you feel lost, and you're angry, and you're bitter, and you're melancholy, and you're sad, and all those things, right? You may be very creative while you're there, that pain and that anger and that frustration and that hurt, those are all powerful motivators, and it can motivate you to be very creative. You might write your best, journal entries, or your best songs, or even do some of your best art, or whatever it is that you're into in that state. But at what cost to yourself are you allowing yourself to stay there? Just think of it like this. When you're in your outhouse, just recognize that that's where you're at. I'm not saying fix yourself. I'm just saying just become aware, become self-aware that, oh, here I am. No wonder I feel like garbage, because I'm in my outhouse. It smells bad. This is not where I belong. I don't want to stay here. And then you can decide, once you realize that's where you're at and you become self-aware, you can realize, I can stay here as long as I want. And you have every right to. You have every right to just stay there and be miserable and to be hurt. You can stay there for as long as you want to stay there. But it's not realistic to think that a lot of people are going to want to visit with you when you're in your outhouse. It's not realistic, to think that people, even the ones that want to rescue you, want to come down there to the outhouse. where you're at. So you got to make a decision, how long do I want to stay here? And then what do I got to do to get back up to my cabin? Because I don't want to live in an outhouse. I don't want to live down here. I don't want to make this my address. So I'm going to take some steps. Let's just say that. I'm going to open some doors and take some steps to get back to health. I'm going to let go of some of this feelings that I have and let go of some of these emotions. And maybe I could be honest, but I don't have to be honest at the point of hurting other people's feelings. Maybe I can just let some things go and just, let them pass. And they don't have to keep me from being productive. They don't have to keep me from being connected. They don't have to keep me, these feelings and thoughts that I'm having don't have to keep me powerless and keep me from moving back up to a place of health. And then, when you're in when you're in your cabin where you belong, and things are going relatively well, and you feel like you're relating good to life, positively to life, remember that there's a whole orchard above you at the hilltop, where all the fruit trees are, of all the type 1 energy. Okay, that's your orchard up at the top of the hill, and you can decide that I want to go up and pick some fruit, and be productive, and I'm gonna take some steps beyond, to health of, ask myself some questions. What can I do right now to be productive and to be useful, and what needs to be done, and what have I been avoiding that I need to put down into practical steps and just accomplish. What good work do I need to do, and how can my work be useful, helpful, productive, supportive, and you're moving then into that 1 energy, which is your healthiest place to be. You're not going to stay there, and you're not going to do 1 things like a 1 would do it. You're going to do it like a 4, which is great. You're going to do it with creativity and inspiration and with meaning. And you're not just checking things off a list like a 1 might do, frustratedly checking stuff off a list because nobody else is going to do it. You're going to do your thing with passion and with zeal and with heart and with emotion, and it's going to be inspirational to other people. If you can just not trip over yourself, if you can not take yourself so seriously that you get in your own way of being successful and being productive and being useful, and you're going to find that you are most happy, most content, most alive when you are productive, useful, and helpful and supportive of other people. When you're not thinking about yourself. And again, you're not going to stay at 1. You're going to come back to your 4 place, and that's fine. That's where you live. That's where you belong. But every once in a while, you gotta get up on the top of that hill where the fruit is. And when you realize that you're stuck down there in the outhouse, just be honest with yourself and just say, this is where I'm at. And I don't want to stay here. It's not my home. In fact, it stinks. And no wonder nobody wants to visit with me. All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a great day. Always be present to life. Be present to life. What does that mean for a 4? Well, I think a 4 could get lost in their fantasy of the way things should be and ought to be, that they have a hard time accepting the way things are. And the way things are is the world you live in. And, it's great to have a desire of what you want it to be like, but some things you can control and those things you should. Things you can't control, you learn to surrender. You learn to accept. You learn to live with. And, for a 4 is about being present to life, and not just your inner life, but to the objective life, the way things are. Okay, thank you guys. As always, in my description, if you want to get in touch with me, I do FaceTime and Skype appointments with people all the time, and I know I'm helped, and I hope they are too. So whatever I can do for you, just let me know. Thanks and blessings.